Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get started here, I'd like to remind everyone that if you like this video, please like and subscribe down below. And my guest here today is from the group Rock and Roll Cannibals, Tristan Thorndyke. Tristan, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
So why don't you give us just a little bit of like a backstory of what got you into music, kind of like what inspires you, and what you're currently doing right now?
Well, my whole family was really into music on both sides, and my grandparents were music teachers, and it's just something that's been a family thing for a long time. So that's kind of how I got started. I'm self-taught on pretty much all of the instruments I play. I pretty much just picked one up and spent a lot of time with it alone until I figured it out. Now the stuff that I play, like the way I got into rockabilly was kind of through punk. I was really into the hardcore punk rock stuff for a while, and then I got to a point where I started realizing that they were pretty much just taking old rock and roll songs and rehashing them into, but with power chords.
Oh, and speeding them up a lot.
Yeah, especially the Misfits.
Yeah.
The Misfits and the Cramps were the two bands that really made me start taking notice of rockabilly music.
Yeah.
And then that pretty much steered my entire career towards psychobilly and rockabilly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember one of the big ones for me that kind of got me into, the whole punk kind of taking rockabilly songs was when The Clash did I Fought the Law.
Okay.
That was a huge one because that was kind of like a rockabilly. That was like a lot slower song, and then they just mashed it up and made it like a minute and a half song, and they played it really, really fast. And I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. It's definitely a new sound.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I kind of prefer the Dead Kennedys cover, I Fought the Law and I Won.
Yeah, that one too. I had a guy on my podcast earlier, I think it's like the second episode, whose dad was one of the tour people with the Dead Kennedys when he was growing up. He
Nice.
he was part of their road crew or something like that. So yeah, it's a nice another Dead Kennedys thing. My favorite song of theirs is Holiday in Cambodia. I love that song.
Nice. Yeah. One of the things that I've always loved about Jello Biafra's writing, and is unfortunately difficult to get away with nowadays, is he had a lot of really sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek writing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started writing songs when I was a teenager, I used him as a big influence of mine. I had one of my songs was called "I'm an American."
Mm-hmm.
The chorus was "Fuck your stupid country, 'cause I'm an American," and it was meant to be tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they kill the poor by the Dead Kennedys. They don't really mean to go out and kill the poor.
Yeah.
They're being sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, people don't get sarcasm anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Especially post the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It's just people don't understand tongue-in-cheek humor. They either accuse you of actually meaning what you're saying, or they praise you because they think you mean what you say, and they're actually just terrible people.
Yeah.
And either way, you don't want that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
It's kind of a depressing trend I've seen in the consumers of music lately. They don't seem to understand tongue-in-cheek humor anymore.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit earlier about how you were self-taught and all the instruments that you really played. How long did it really take you to really kind of get the gist of were there some instruments that were a lot easier to learn, or how'd that all work out?
Well, I mean, I started playing guitar before I learned bass, and learning guitar makes learning bass way easier. So, because you kind of already have a lot of an idea of just the mechanics of the thing. You just have to allow for a longer neck a lot of times and less strings, So you're really not starting off at a disadvantage at that point. But like drums, for instance, that is a lot more hard to figure out. I'm lucky I started out with that being the first instrument I learned, because you're trying to organize all of your different limbs and use them at once, like an octopus person. It's completely different than just trying to concentrate on your hands, also having to work your feet into the whole equation.
Yeah, I've always said, well, because I just drummed on the side. I was never like in a band or anything. I just did it for fun. But I always said that I thought drums were probably one of the most underappreciated parts of a band, just because they're the ones that keep the beat and they're the ones that kind of everyone else plays off of. And it's a hard position. But do you think learning that first also kind of helped you in learning like guitar, and then obviously guitar helped with bass, but like with drums, you kind of learned how to like make the beat and kind of just set the tone of like music. Did that help a lot when you're then picking up the guitar?
I think it helped. Well, first of all, if you don't have rhythm, you're gonna have a bad time trying to make music, especially if you start out as a solo artist, because you're the only thing there. So if you don't have beat, people aren't going to enjoy listening to you. Yeah. You have nothing else to fall back on. I will say that it also probably had a bit of an influence on me with the more rhythmic style that I use on guitar than some people. Yeah. I do much more like rhythm guitar and very beat-based things as opposed to noodling. A lot of people like to do a lot of like slowing up and down and picking and things like that, and that's not really my style.
Yeah. So I was going to wait until a little bit longer to ask, but since people can obviously get a view of you, when did you finally decide to really rock the rockabilly look? When did that really come into place?
I guess when I was about 18 or 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, how much gel do you have to use on that hair?
Well, right now I don't have any in, as you can see. Oh, yeah? I left my pomade. I'm in the middle of moving, and I left my pomade at the other apartment.
Oh, yeah.
So, but generally, yeah, when it's in its full glory, it really only takes about like one little scoop of Murray's pomade, and you have to get it all wet and mix it in your hands, and then do the whole thing. It's a little, it's a little bit of a process, but at the end of the day, not too much more than most people have to go through in the morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I first saw your profile pic on Facebook, I said, "Oh my God, it looks like Johnny Depp from Crybaby."
I've gotten that a lot.
Yeah,
gotten a lot.
Yeah. So I was like, "Oh, that's great." So what would you say? Is it easy to find those type of clothes nowadays, or do you really have to kind of like go to thrift stores and like really search for that type of stuff?
Well, like the Western shirts and stuff like that. Yeah, if you want to get a good deal on them, it's best to like look around in vintage stores, because if you just try to get that stuff on the internet, they're gonna charge you out the ass.
Yeah.
But it's not that hard to keep your eyes open. Honestly, I mean, just jeans and a t-shirt is kind of standard 50s anyway. Just like a white t-shirt and blue jeans. It's not that you can pretty much get anything you need at Goodwill. It's all about the way you wear it, I think, is a little bit what makes it different. Like like cuffing your sleeves, things like that. Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit before we started recording this podcast, and you mentioned something that I think people would be very interested to know. You said that older ladies really like the look and really go crazy. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that for the audience?
I have definitely had senior citizens hit on me, or tell me that I look just like some guy they used to date back in the 1950s or something, and it's always, I always take it as flattering, but also it's always some a little awkward when you have an octogenarian hitting on you.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Little old ladies, they speak their mind. They do not care.
Oh yeah. Well, they have limited time left, so they might as well just get it out in the open.
Yeah.
So especially if, for those of you who don't know that you're from Texas, did you find it a little bit hard? Because when most people think of Texas, I mean, just the stereotypical American would think that Texas, I mean, it's like country music and it's rodeo and stuff like that. Did you find it hard growing up to like be into the punk scene, be into a different genre, especially growing up in a place like Texas, or is that all kind of just a myth that the media like perpetuates about Texas?
No, I'd be a millionaire if I had a nickel for every time I was walking home from high school and somebody yelled faggot out their window at me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's just something you kind of accept if you're not if you don't fall into the cookie cutter Republican ideal of what a Texan should be. But at the same time, I live in a place called Denton, which is a lot like a smaller Austin.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing is nowhere near as rampant here where I live, and especially in these days.
Yeah.
We're talking about like the late 90s when I was in high school, like early 2000s. that was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And things are a lot more progressive here in Denton compared to like, say, I don't know, Boyd or something like that. We're part of like a little blue dot, and then there's another blue dot in Austin, and then Dallas is kind of purple.
Yeah.
And then the rest is pretty much red. But
yeah, I was gonna say, because like I saw on your Facebook page, it was about like something about Republicans or whatever, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's a Democrat in Texas. I was like, that must be an interesting story. Yeah.
I'm not a Democrat.
Oh yeah, you're not.
I'm an independent.
Yep.
I'm a democratic socialist.
Yep.
And I just feel I generally tend to vote for Democrats because they're usually the lesser evil compared to the Republicans. But I don't like the Democrats much better.
Oh yeah.
I would honestly, I think the Democratic Socialists need to start their own political party because centrist Democrats are useless.
Yeah, that's true.
They're too invested in keeping the status quo with the way Wall Street owns almost everything. They're too invested in keeping that to be the way it is. And they don't give a damn that they're selling out the next generation of people that aren't going to have anything left over once these people are done.
Absolutely.
Because they know they're just going to die and they're not going to have to worry about it.
Oh yeah, they're all in the big government bank, or they're all in the bank account of some executive that gave them $2 million for their campaign. So they could care less. But you said earlier that you wrote some. Do you write all the music for your band, or how's that work?
The vast majority of it, yes. On our first album, there was one song that I co-wrote with a member of a band, and on my latest album, we do cover one song by a band that I was kind of friends with from New Orleans. It's an instrumental piece, but aside from that, yes, I write the vast majority of the material that we do. But when we play live, of course, I'll do some covers just for the crowd, because they're crowd pleasers.
What are some of your most popular covers that you like to play the most?
Blue Moon of Kentucky, made famous by Elvis.
Yep.
That's one. What I Say by Ray Charles.
Oh, yep.
Ooey Baby, I forget originally did it, but the Cramps covered it a lot. And I loved covering Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry is by far one of my biggest influences. So I do Go Little Queenie is one I do a lot, and also Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you, for the crowds that you play at, I mean, we'll get into kind of like the performing wise a little bit later, but just ahead of time, the crowds that you're playing for, do you tend to attract an older audience because of the style of music that you're playing, or do you get younger crowds to a majority?
It depends, honestly, on the venue. There's just some venues that younger people are more willing to go to, and there's some venues that older people prefer. I found it, like, the nicer the bathroom, the more likely you're going to have an older clientele.
Yeah.
That's the way you can tell what kind of crowd you're going to have. Like, before they show up and you're just there setting up, you're like, all right, I'm going to go to the bathroom and check it out. If there's a mirror in the men's room, it's going to be a tame crowd. If there's no mirror in the men's room, that means it's going to be a rowdy punk crowd.
Or a broken mirror.
So many mirrors that they stopped being solid.
Yep. So when do you write the songs, or do you write the riffs, or do you do both?
I do both.
Okay.
But I think it's important to note, you mentioned the band name earlier, Rock and Roll Cannibals, and you were curious about its origin. Part of the reason I call us the Rock and Roll Cannibals is because part of what I do is I take older songs and take ideas from them, and then I mix that with modern day context, and but while keeping the sound of the 50s prevalent in the entire thing, so that I'm cannibalizing older music and repurposing it, which is why we're the Rock and Roll Cannibals, because we cannibalize rock and roll.
Yeah.
So
what about 50s music and that type of genre in particular really attracted you to sort of like make your band about that and have that be your genre? What in particular, kind of when you heard that type of music, were you like, oh my God, that's great? What was there any like style in particular?
Well, a lot of it was the simplicity of it and the catchiness of it. I realized that a lot of, bands that try to make their songs really flowery and overly complicated and, 10-minute guitar solos and, lyrics that are supposed to seem poetic but really just don't make any sense. It's also pretentious and doesn't seem to actually be. They lose the catchiness of the 3-chord 12-bar skeleton to writing a song. Like, those songs get stuck in your head because they're catchy, because they're simple. That's why more people get something like I don't know. Like, if you have a 3-chord song, it's more likely to get stuck in your head than a classical song, or even most classical songs that keep it simple. Like, all right, for example, Paco Bell's Canon. Da 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 da. It's just that over and over and over again. That's one of the only classical songs. I don't know about you, but that's one of the only ones that ever actively gets stuck in my head, like that and Flight of the Valkyries.
Oh yeah.
It's because he kept the same bass line the entire time, and then just kind of added and took away like layers. But the bass line stays the same the whole time, which is what makes it catchy. It's what makes it stick in your head. And I feel like that's really what blues structured rock and roll music is all about. It's catchy. It gets stuck in your head. It makes you tap your foot almost against your will.
Yeah. I just really appreciate that music personally myself, is because it kind of takes you back to like the foundation of rock and roll, kind of like the beginning of it, kind of it's more pure form before it kind of got corrupted a little bit and like twist and turned and mixed a little bit. And it kind of takes you back to a little bit more of a simpler time, obviously, before all this technology, and just when it just seemed like life just seemed a little bit more simpler. So I really think it's a huge nostalgia piece too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Americans love nostalgia because we know what's coming.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yep.
It's easier to look backwards at this point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm actually about to record a solo album about that very subject.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be called Postmodern Dustbowl.
Yep.
And it's going to be in the style of Woody Guthrie, kind of like 30s Dust Bowl folk music. Mm-hmm. But about current political events and problems and just the current atmosphere we have in our country.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, but I already got a little bit of the answer. I was going to ask, where do you get most of your lyrics from? Is it more of like day-to-day stuff, like interactions, or is it stuff from you hear on the news? But would you say it's maybe like a combination of the both, or are you one of those guys? I've never had a guy on this show before. I've always dreamt of having the one that says, yeah, I just had like a weird dream, and then the lyrics like came to me in my head, and then I came down and wrote it down, and then people are like, no, that doesn't really happen. That's just in movies. But so how does your like writing process really work for you?
Well, my writing process generally begins with me drinking and smoking weed by myself while thinking, and every once in a while I'll get like I'll hear something that's like a turn of phrase that I'm like, oh hey, I can write a song around that, and that'll seem like a catchy idea. Mm-hmm. I think that's how the song "Graveyard Bait" got written. I heard the term "graveyard bait" as in a song about safe driving. Actually, it was an old '50s country song about not driving too fast. And they said something about those hairpin turns are graveyard bait, but you better slow down. And I was like, graveyard bait, that's a cool saying. And so I wrote a song about a girl that is responsible for lots of guys getting killed mysteriously. And like, better leave that girl alone. She's graveyard bait.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that I also really enjoyed about those songs, and a lot of people do too, is that those songs really told stories back then. Like, they really had a lot of...
Yeah, they were ballads.
Exactly. Like, if you really hear about, I forgot what it's called, but Pearl Jam recently covered it, and it's pretty good, but it's, oh, where did my baby be? The Lord took her away from me. Yeah, that song, yeah. Like they tell like stories.
Last Kiss or something like that.
Yeah, Last Kiss. Yeah, that's what it is. That's the one that I could really remember. I mean, like they tell stories and like they're kind of almost like fables in a sense, because some of them kind of like just teach you like stuff not to do, and songs don't have that anymore. Like we've discussed this on multiple of my podcasts about how just songwriting in general has kind of just suffered from that, where it's just become way too commercialized now, where they're just going to say, well, how much money can we possibly make out of what type of song people want, and let's not take any risks. Have you had any trouble with that yourself?
Well, when it comes to being invested in by people, is that? Yes, of course, that's been an issue. Pretty much everything I've put out has been self-funded, or self-funded, and also from donations from viewers like you.
Yeah, you hear that, everyone? Everyone out here, make sure to look this up and give this guy some of your money, okay?
Yeah, no, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll save the plugs for the end, but we'll definitely give you a plug on that front. But one of the main things that we like to talk about, there's probably like 2 or 3 main points that we like to bring up every podcast, but one of them is performing live and kind of like the high and the rush that it kind of gives the musician, and kind of, I mean, these songs, especially coming from you, where you've wrote them yourself, you practiced them probably like a million times, and then you finally get to like release them onto the world. What kind of a feeling does that bring you, and how special is that to you?
Well, it's incredibly important to me, partially not just because it's my life's work, so that kind of goes without saying. It should be somewhat important to me.
Yeah.
But also, I have to say it's cathartic, and especially the upcoming album that I'm about to put out is going to be immensely cathartic, because unlike the Rock and Roll Cannibals stuff, where I'm singing about goofy, fun things like werewolves on cocaine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is going to be this is me venting all of my anger and frustration with just how backwards our country has slid in everything. How much we've just lowered the bar below sea level on all of our values.
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredibly important to me to be able to do something productive to do that. Otherwise, I'd be a terrorist by now. I would just be blowing up buildings, and that's not a good thing. So, do you find the better way to deal with my anger at the Trump administration?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, being in a state that we kind of already did the political thing, but being in a state that is generally a red state, I mean, they haven't voted Democrat in forever. Do you find it hard to find? I mean, you have Austin and you have the place that you're living in right now, but do you find it hard to find an audience, especially in Texas?
No, Texas is a lot more purple than a lot of people would lead you to believe. It's just that there are lots of area that are solid red that are like large pieces of Texas.
Oh yeah.
There's not much there. The cows don't vote. It's mostly, there's like barely any humans there, but all of them vote Republican.
Yeah.
So it's, we look a lot more red than we actually are, because like a lot of that red area, there's no people living there. At least there's not that many compared to the big blue dots where Austin and Houston and Dallas are. Like, that's where all the thing is. All the liberal people crowd into the cities because they want to have shit to do.
Yeah.
Like, it's the weird Christian rednecks that are okay with being bored all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the...
I got my Bible. I don't need no fancy...
yeah. It's the same thing in Minnesota, because we just have Minneapolis-St. Paul, which is blue, and the entire rest of the state is red, but then Democrats still win every year because Minneapolis, everyone votes blue, yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, because even if you looked at the electoral map from 2016, I mean, it's all red, middle of the country and everything, and then just the coast, there's those little blue dots, but it's just... Still, I mean, it just shows how, like you said, how the country is developed, and now we're kind of just like segregating ourselves into separate communities.
Right. And that's why, unfortunately, as much as it sucks, what I'd like to do is encourage more liberals to move to terrible Republican states, because we can start to like even it out a little bit if we do that. But if the problem is, because we want to live around like-minded individuals, we end up being, even though we're the majority of the country, we end up being screwed by the Electoral College because of the way people have segregated themselves in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Electoral College, I mean, sure, it was a fine idea when they first came up with it because there was only 13 colonies and you can only have a certain amount of votes. But yeah, now it's been outdated for at least the last 200 years. They gotta fix something like that.
The other big issue I have with the Electoral College is that when we have general elections where everyone's voting, it's people of all demographics and income brackets.
Mm-hmm.
So you have poor people voting just as much as you have rich people voting. I'm pretty sure there's not a single member of the Electoral College that is in a low income bracket.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that.
Yeah.
So that's an issue for me as a poor person, that at the end of the day, my vote really doesn't matter. It's these rich people's votes that matter because they're the ones that actually make the decision.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like, this will be like the last thing that, because we're going off on a tangent, but one of the biggest things I think that most people don't talk about, though, is that last election, almost half the people didn't vote. It was like 46% like abstained, and it's just, I mean, you see like all these protests, and they're like, yeah, F Trump, like we hate them that they won, and then like the people ask them, who'd you vote for, and they're like, oh, we didn't vote.
Here's the way I would describe the 2016 election if it were like a dinner party, okay? So we've got Bernie, Hillary, and Trump. So it's like, all right, so we're inviting you to a dinner party. You can either have your favorite grandma's best Thanksgiving dinner ever, or a peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich, or a literal bowl of human feces. And a bunch of people went, oh, we'll take the TV, or we want the Thanksgiving dinner. And they went, well, we were joking about that. It's the peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich, or the bowl of shit. And like 40% of the country went, well, fuck this dinner party.
Yeah.
This was falsely advertised. I'm not coming.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a bunch of people went, all right, well, I really wanted the Thanksgiving dinner, but I'm a pragmatist, so I will take the peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich, as disgusting as it is. Which is what I did when Bernie lost the primaries. I knuckled under, and I did vote for Hillary against my wishes because it was still better than Trump. But then, here's the thing. What we didn't know is that there were a bunch of people who secretly loved to eat shit. So when this bowl of shit was around, they just went, oh, I don't have to hide the fact I love to eat shit anymore. Oh, my God, I'm bringing all my friends out of the closet. Dude, we don't have to hide the shit eating. We can eat shit in public now.
Yeah.
Let's eat. Oh, let's have a shit buffet. And that is the Trump administration. We didn't know how many people secretly were just awful. They'd managed to hide amongst us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, now we're going into the show kind of perspective. What was your first show, and do you like have any memories from it? Like, were you nervous? How did that all turn out?
Well, my very first stage performance was as a little tiny kid in a school play in Pakistan, actually. I was in Pakistan.
How'd you go to Pakistan?
My grandparents, I told you, were music teachers. They worked for the Catholic Church.
Oh.
And they were music teaching for a Catholic Church-owned school in Pakistan at the time, and I went to visit them for 6 months. So I went to preschool there.
Wow.
I was a kiddie. And I think I cried on stage because I was really confused, and I was the only white person, and I did not really understand what was going on because I was like 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you have any like pre-show traditions that you do now, like, or do you just kind of wing it when you just go, or how does that work?
Well, pre-show traditions. I mean, I wouldn't say traditions so much as just stuff you have to do. You just have to get stuff ready, make sure you're tuned up and make sure you have enough drinks to last you while you're on stage.
Yeah.
Use the bathroom ahead of time because nothing sucks worse than realizing you have to pee halfway through a set.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say because like I started that question like a few podcasts ago, and a couple of people were just like, "Oh no, we just like get drunk or we don't get drunk, we just take a few drinks or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, that's about it." Like nobody like they always have those concert tour movies where like people get in a circle and they pray and they're all like holding hands and like, "Dear God, please give us a great show out there" or something like that. And then that doesn't happen.
I don't know if you've caught this yet, but I'm not deeply religious.
Oh no, I know, but I'm just saying like everyone that I've talked to doesn't say anything like that. Like it was like I was was like, oh, okay, yeah. So now we're going to the part of the podcast. It's kind of like our Inside the Actors Studio where we just ask you some questions. I have a ballot that I put forward, and then once we reach a certain amount of episodes, I'll definitely like add it up and then see what we got total. So the first question is, out of all the songs that have ever been written in the history of music, what is one song that you personally wish you had come up with yourself?
Jeez, that's a tough one. God. Sympathy for the Devil, I'd have to say.
Great song.
Yeah. I think the idea of following Satan's life throughout the history of the world and chronicling all the places where he like went out of his way to screw with humanity. I think that's a great concept for a song.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I also like kind of like Nib from Black Sabbath, kind of just like telling about the devil falling in love. That's kind of cool too. I actually like that. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's definitely a great genre. Me personally, because I haven't done this before, everyone. So this is the first podcast where I'm going to answer my own questions that way myself. One song that I wish I'd probably come up with. I don't know. I don't want to be a loser and say like Stairway to Heaven or something like that, and then just be like, oh my God, you're just such a. I don't know, but I'd probably have to go with that just because I'd want a song that would just be like so well known or that would travel through time. It would probably be that or yeah, I'd have to say that. But yeah, I know everyone. I'm just a poser who's just a loser who likes all the pop stuff. But okay, second question.
Stairway to Heaven's got to suck for everybody in a wheelchair, right?
Oh yeah.
Do they also have like a handicap ramp to heaven? Or is that, like...
I know. But it's just such an oversaturated song that I know everyone. I suck for choosing it. My second choice would have probably been Master of Puppets because that's from Metallica because that was the one song that really got me into kind of like the more metalish music, which I was shocked about. But now second question is, out of all the artists that have ever played, like dead or alive, it doesn't matter which one. If you could play with one of them for one show, who would it be and why?
Oh, man, that's tough. So dead or alive?
Yeah, either one.
Because alive would narrow it down a lot.
Yeah. You could do both if you wanted to.
Well, alive, either Iggy Pop or Weird Al.
Yep.
But dead, there's just so many great people. I guess Chuck Berry or... Man, the Cramps.
Yeah.
Lux Interior's dead, so But yeah, probably the Cramps or Chuck Berry.
Everyone out there, I'm gonna save my answer until we get down to the fourth question because it kind of coincides with the fourth question. But the third question is, out of all the venues on the planet, if you had a chance to play at any one of them, what is the one that you would play at and why?
Well, shit, CBGB's doesn't exist anymore. So that's no longer an option. I guess the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh, yeah.
Just to, because that's where Johnny Cash filmed the Johnny Cash show. And I think Hank Sr. used to play there, too. And also, I think it would really be a bone in the throat to a lot of conservative Christian Republicans if a punk rocker like me got to play the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, that would be a sight to see for sure. You would definitely have to film that. Everyone would want to see that.
Oh yeah.
Would you pull off like an Alice Cooper like show and then just have like blood coming off your like fake blood coming out and everything?
Well, maybe not out of my mouth just because that makes it difficult to sing and I don't want to get the microphone messy. But I oftentimes actually on stage I'll wear like a bloodstained T-shirt.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say like from your pictures I could see that you definitely like theatrics. Kind of where did that come from? Do you think were you just fans of that type of stuff as a kid or how'd you learn about that?
Well, I really liked the idea of, because the band name is Rock and Roll Cannibals. I liked the idea of going kind of literal with the theme and just pretending to be actual cannibals. So, actually, here's a funny story. Okay, so one of our first gigs, we had forgotten to advertise very well. And so it basically turned into like a dress rehearsal where we were just getting free beer because we knew we weren't going to get paid. So we were just getting drunk as we could because that was the only way we were going to get paid for anything. And we were, the zombie makeup, fake blood, fake body parts all over the stage, yada yada. Well, at the end of the night, I was drunk and I couldn't quite get all the body parts back in my duffel bag. So there's like an arm sticking out and a head sticking out. And I washed off the zombie makeup, but I'm still wearing a shirt covered in fake blood. And I had just moved, so when my friends tried to drop me off at my house, I couldn't remember which house was mine. And they got tired of me and just dropped me off saying, like, oh, you'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I guess I fell asleep on trying to find my house in a ditch. So when the cops find me, they're like, we have, it's like 4 a.m. They're like, we have all white male passed out in a ditch with what appears to be a duffel bag full of body parts, and he's covered in blood. We are assuming armed and dangerous and proceeding with extreme caution. So I wake up to cops with guns and mace and flashlights this far from my face, yelling, "Wake up, motherfucker! Wake the fuck up! Whose bodies are these? Whose bodies are these?" And nothing will sober you up faster, man. So I wake up and I managed to blurt out, "They're not real. They're not real." And one of the guys, he puts on a glove, he puts his gun away, and takes out an arm and squeezes it a couple times and says, "It's fucking latex," to his partner. His partner uncocks his gun. Uncocks it. It was cocked. Ooh. He was ready to shoot me in the fucking face if I moved at all. He uncocks his gun, puts it away, looks at me and says, "Boy, what the hell do you think you're doing?" And I explained the situation to them, and they laugh their asses off and give me a ride home and help me with my equipment. They helped me, because I also had an amp and a guitar with me too. Wow! And they helped me carry my shit into my house. Yeah, they told me that every night in the locker rooms when they get off work, shift change, they exchange, stories with the new crew coming in as to what's the craziest thing you dealt with your last shift. And he said I was going to win them their story that night, and they didn't want to even deal with the paperwork on a drunken public because that was all it was going to be. Because they were about to get off work, so they're just like, screw it, we'll just give you a ride home.
Oh God, that is great. That is great. Yeah. Just waking up to that. Yeah,
that's how I almost got killed by the police once.
Yeah, jeez. Oh, that would have been a weird story had they done shot you. Just he got killed with fake latex body parts that they thought was Yeah, that would be definitely something to put on the gravestone. Thought he was a murderer. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah, thought he was a serial killer.
Yeah, thought he was. All right, so we got our 2 last questions. They're kind of the same, but we like to spread them out. So, what is a guilty pleasure song that people would not think that you would like when they'd first meet you, or even when they get to know you?
Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
That one. I mean, we had a guy that said Backstreet Boys. I Want It That Way. So we're getting close to a tie. I'd say with those 2, yeah. So we'll see who wins.
Originally, that song was from a male point of view.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Cyndi Lauper covered it. She didn't write that.
Oh, wow.
It was written in the 60s by a guy, and the idea was that the girls were keeping him out at night. So when he gets home, he's like, "What can I do, Mom and Dad? The girls just want to have fun.
Oh.
If I want to keep my girlfriend, I have to stay out late and stuff." That's the original meaning of the song, and then they kind of changed it for Cyndi Lauper.
Oh. See, we just got a history fact there, okay? This podcast does more than just talk music. We're going to educate you. You guys learned that Cyndi Lauper didn't originally write Girls Just Want to Have Fun. She's covered it. So, what would you say, or my guilty pleasure, well, no, we'll get to that part of the next question because it goes with it, but guilty pleasure genre that people wouldn't think that you'd like?
Genre?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I mean, I guess... Well, I think most people would probably expect me to... I mean, they know I like old school country and swing and folk and rockabilly. I think unfortunately, I think my music tastes are somewhat predictable in a lot of ways.
There's no K-pop or anything?
No. Let me think. Prince.
Prince
is somebody most people probably wouldn't... Or I like David Bowie a lot, too. So glam rock, stuff like that.
I live 5 miles away from Prince's house that he used to live in.
Really?
Yep.
His royal badness himself.
His royal badness. Yep. I live in Bloomington, Minnesota. He lives in Chanhassen, Minnesota. They're right next to each other. The night that he died, I drove past his house and saw the cameras and everything out there, and it was, for Minnesotans, he is definitely something special. Just that's a whole tangent that I could go into, but we'd be talking to it for 2 hours. But yeah, Prince Prince lives strong. I mean, rest in peace, Prince. But yeah, absolutely. My guy I was gonna say would be Bryan Adams. I have gone to see him in concert like four times. I think it's one of those things. Yeah, I don't know why. Just when I was a kid, I just really started to like his music, and I was like, hey, it's great. So I go to his concerts. He's got some really good songs. I mean, he's basically all love songs. So it's kind of it's a good date to take your significant other on. But yeah.
Last week I actually just saw. I went to see the B-52s in Culture Club.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was a good show.
Yeah, they got some good songs.
I've always loved the B-52s. Yeah. I've found it impossible to be in a bad mood while listening to something like Rock Lobster. Yeah. I
was literally listening to Love Shack on the drive home from work today. Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of trying to bring it. They remind me a little bit more of kind of like not like one of those like '60s bands where it's kind of just the vibe that they give out when they're playing, and I kind of enjoy it. Like early '60s, like kind of like pre-Beatles, just like
yeah. Just fun. It's just fun.
And there needs to be more groups like that, especially like in the times that we're living in now. I mean, there just needs to be a way for people to like release their anxiety and their fears and just relax for a while and just say, hey. Let's take the next hour off when you're at our concert to just chill out and have some fun and just forget about all your worries. Worry about the apocalypse and everything else as soon as the concert's over. But yeah. So when do you perform next? Or do you have any upcoming shows that you'd like to promote?
Well, let me see here. I'm gonna be playing the 20th of this month at Andy's Bar in Denton, Texas. I'm also going to be playing the Loophole in Denton, Texas, the last Thursday of the month, doing a doo-wop act with my girlfriend, Kimberly Ann Cooper. We have kind of a Johnny Cash and June Cash impersonator thing, and we also do some doo-wop tunes and things like that. And I'll be in... Actually, the Rock and Roll Cannibals is making our Las Vegas debut on August 10th. So if any of our listeners are in the Las Vegas area, we'll be at the Double Down Saloon in Las Vegas, August 10th.
Wow. And you mentioned before, right before we go here, that you done like a little bit of touring. Could you share with us kind of like what that experience was like for you?
Well, sure. I mean, I've done I've done a lot of guerrilla touring, I think is the better way to put it. Like I've never had an experience where like, oh, we've got a tour bus and no. It's always been like, hey, we're cramming a bunch of sweaty people into the few cars we've managed to put together and put this drum in your lap. You're gonna have that on there for like 6 hours. All right, deal with it. That sort of thing. God, there was this one touring thing where me and a bassist, because there was only one bed in a hotel room for like 6 people, the bassist and I managed to do this thing where we lied back to back on the floor so that we on the hardwood floor so that the minimum amount of like our bodies had to be on the floor as possible. We could just kind of lean against each other. So. And it's like slightly more, things like of that nature. Our last tour that we tried to do last summer, unfortunately, got completely disrupted by the hurricane. In South Texas. So we were supposed to the thing that was supposed to kick off the tour was Houston. Yeah. That was our first date, and we couldn't get into Houston because it was flooded. So we ended up pretty much just doing. We had like 6 dates, and we had to cancel all but 2. Wow. Unfortunately. San Antonio and Austin we managed to still do. But
do you find touring in Texas is a little bit tougher? Because when most people are realize because Texas is such a huge state, just driving to these places, I mean, people would think like Dallas and Austin might be close or some of those cities, but some of them are like 8 hours away from each other, and it's just long distances to drive. Do you find that that's a little bit more challenging than, say, maybe if you lived someplace where the travel times weren't as long?
I mean, it might be a little bit more expensive for gas, but aside from that, the thing is, between those major metropolitan areas, just a lot of wide open space, flat land and cows and occasional farms and stuff, and every once in a while there'll be like a little patch of suburbia, and that's it. Or like there'll be like a patch of suburbia and some strip malls, and that seems to be completely contained. They never really leave that area, so it's not like the traffic's too bad. Usually going like that, it's the speed limit's like 70 or 80.
Wow.
So in the middle of nowhere, so you can just zoom
one
place to another once you get out of the city areas. It's really just when you're dealing with like Dallas traffic or something like that. That's where, or Austin or Houston traffic. That's when it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So if you do a lot of your traveling in the middle of the night, it helps.
Yeah. So do you find when you guys are touring, do you find it somewhat harder to kind of like maintain like a normal schedule when it comes to like sleep, when it comes to all that? Do you kind of have to suffer the consequences, or are you able to adapt?
Oh, you have no idea, man. It's a constant point of contention between myself and my girlfriend. The fact that I have a tendency to wake up at 2 in the afternoon and go to bed around 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's just the schedule I'm on because of what I do for a living. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to have that schedule myself, but then after I graduated college and everything, I was like, yeah, I can't do that anymore. Just like staying up till like 4 a.m. and getting up at noon. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's a lot better of a lifestyle, I think, just getting up late. I mean, you do kind of miss a lot of the day, but it's nice to sleep in until that time. But
this time of year in Texas, it almost seems more practical.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You want to sleep through the hot part of the day and wake up when the sun's finally going down. You know, like it's too hot. It was like 105 today here.
Oh.
So, and that's before you add the heat index. It's like 110. It feels like 110. It's 105.
I was gonna say when it gets 90 degrees here, like people start freaking out, and it's just like ugh. But yeah, it's incredible. We have one city, Duluth. It's like right up in the northern part. It was a little funny tangent, little short mini story for everyone here listening. We had one day where it reached 98 here, but up in Duluth, which is 2 hours north of where I am, because they live right next to Lake Superior, they got the lake effect. It was only 60 degrees there.
Wow.
It's one of those huge differences where we always it's just amazing. But yeah, I mean, Texas, especially since there's not like a lot of really, when you think about like not a lot of like grass out there, a lot of prairie land. Does the humidity really amp up the temperature down there?
Not where I am as much,
yeah.
Because I'm in North Texas.
Yeah.
In East Texas, yeah, like near the Gulf of Mexico and stuff, yeah, that's a much bigger problem. But
yeah.
It kind of feels like walking around. Like like a thick comforter.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have those as cold, but imagine soaking that in hot water and then draping it over yourself and trying to walk everywhere with that weighted down, hot, soggy comforter. That's pretty much what it feels like.
How do you adapt? Like even as musicians playing, have you guys ever played like outdoors? Well, you guys probably obviously have, but
the gig I just played was outdoors. Yeah.
So how do you deal with that, especially in the temperature? I mean, because even though it like gets nighttime, it gets a little cooler, but it could still be like 90 degrees out there with the humidity, and it could still feel like 100. How do you compensate? Do you have to like have extra special protection for like the equipment to make sure it doesn't like overheat or something like that? How do you manage?
Well, not so. I mean, you keep it out of the direct sunlight, of course, and also you have to acclimate your guitar to whatever environment you're going to be playing it in about at least an hour ahead of time, because wooden instruments warp slightly and do different things in different temperatures. So if you don't allow it to adjust to the atmosphere of where you're going to be playing, you're going to be dealing with constantly having to retune in between every song because it's going out of tune, trying to get used to the temperatures.
Yeah, that's it. That's something that I mean, people don't realize. I remember my dad was always telling me, because we're kind of a baseball family in my house, but how the Texas Rangers never play afternoon games because it gets so hot there. They always got to play their games at night, and it's unbelievable. And then you see like all those movies like Friday Night Lights or whatever like that. I do not get how those guys could play football or do even their practices during those times. It's ugh.
Dude, I was on the football team in like middle school and early high school, and yeah, it was brutal having practice, because we would have practice sometimes we'd have practice after school instead of before school.
Yeah,
and it was sweltering, but I mean, they're really good about giving everybody water.
Yeah,
you know.
I was gonna say, does your body get used to it? Well, because obviously being from Minnesota, we're probably like the coldest part in the country, especially during the wintertime. Your body does get a little bit used to it, but for the heat, do you feel that like since you've been there a long time, does your body eventually not like get used to it, but learn to adapt in ways?
I guess. I'm also a really skinny dude.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of I work a lot better in heat than I do in the cold because I don't have anything to keep the heat in.
Yeah.
Also, years and years of, I guess, clumsy or hard living, and also playing instruments has left me with a fair bit of joint problems, and the cold is way worse for that than warmth.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think I'm still better off in Texas than in Minnesota.
Oh, trust me, until once it reaches -20 and you can't be outside for more than 2 minutes without getting frostbite. Yeah, but that only happens like 2 or 3 times a year. But our average temperature is right around like 0 when it gets to like January, and yeah, they always have. If you've ever seen like those challenges where people will go to their kitchen, get a glass of water, and then throw it out, and then it disapparates like right before it hits the ground because it's so cold. It like turns into like a cloud or whatever. It's ridiculous. And then we had one time where it was so cold that we took a banana outside and we used it as a hammer, and it actually worked. We could hammer a nail into wood because it was that cold. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets pretty bad up here, but we enjoyed it. I mean, this is definitely a hockey state where everyone plays hockey, and that's just what it goes. But yeah. So what would you say is, where do you think the future is going to go for your band? What is your maybe your goal for like the next year? Do you have like any goals in mind that you'd like to accomplish?
Well, right now I think the band is kind of plateauing for a little bit. My drummer's moving to Colorado soon.
Oh.
And we released the last album. We just got nominated Best Rockabilly Band in Texas by MXD Magazine.
Wow.
So we're going to an award show for that here pretty soon. But after that, like I said, I'm releasing a solo album. And so I think I'm going to be pushing that for a little bit and moving my focus a little bit away from the Cannibals and more towards my solo act and my duet act with my girlfriend for about the next year.
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do is line up some cruise ship gigs.
Ooh.
And basically save up money doing that while we're working on cruise ships, and then come back, and then I can reinvest in the Cannibals again.
Be careful about those cruise ships, though, because everyone hears the stories about how bacteria infested and how dirty those things are. I gotta say, you just gotta be careful about those things.
I will use hand sanitizer.
I know, because I just remember there was this one NBC report where they just found a cesspool of like germs and bacteria on cruise ships for some reason. They don't know why, but I was like, so whenever I hear cruise ships, I'm like, oh yeah, but is there any cruise ships in particular, like any routes that you would like want to go, or do you just any cruise ship for you?
Hey, anybody that's willing to pay me.
Hell yeah, that's all it's about, man. Really, when you get down to it. So right at the end here, and one of the last things I like to do is I like to plug the ever living crap out of where everyone can get all of your music. Do you have it on YouTube? Do you have it on Spotify? Where can people find you and get a hold of you and get a hold of your music?
Well, you can find my music on YouTube, Spotify, CD Baby. You can contact me directly for actual physical copies of both albums, or T-shirts, or buttons, or bumper stickers. I've got all kinds of merchandising. Rock and Roll Cannibals, the T-shirt. Rock and Roll Cannibals, the flamethrower. Anyway,
if you have a flamethrower, I'm down.
I wish. I can't. I don't think they're allowed to mail me those.
Yes.
But yeah, you can look up Rock and Roll Cannibals on Facebook and contact me there. Yeah. You can send an email to Tristan Thorndyke at yahoo.com. And yes, we will mail you whatever you want. Yeah. We use PayPal. We accept all credit cards, and we promise to give them back eventually.
So for your new material, are you just going to go by Tristan Thorndyke, or are you going to come up with a different name?
Just going by my name.
Okay. Yeah, so like if everyone wants to look up that, then just make sure to just look up Tristan Thorndyke in a couple of months, and you definitely let us know when you're releasing that stuff so I can plug it for you and let people know where it's at, because I mean, I really personally, this is one of the podcasts that I've really, really enjoyed, because rockabilly is not something that people really talk about anymore. It's not really something listened to, and it's always nice to know that there are people like you out there that are just trying to keep that spirit of music alive and just still playing that type of music, because it really does bring that nostalgic feeling back to people, and it helps a lot of people. I mean, like you say, you're swatting off all the old ladies with a bat all the time, and you're just yeah. But I mean, it's nice to know that people are still trying to preserve that type of music, because I mean, like I've said before, it's the roots of rock and roll music. It's the purest form when it was first becoming, like, right before it became like super mainstream, where everyone just kind of tore it to pieces. So, man, I wish you nothing but the best of luck in all of your endeavors, and just definitely keep me posted on if you're touring, whatever you're doing, and then I'll plug it all for you. I mean, it was really a great pleasure to have you on the show, and Tristan, I mean, anytime you also want to come back on the show and just talk about anything, man, you just let me know, okay?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. All right, well, as before, like I said, if you enjoyed this interview, please like and subscribe down below. Follow Tristan on Facebook. I can link to your Facebook down below if that's all right with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and I'll definitely send links to their stuff on Spotify and iTunes, or I'll mention it down below. And everyone, this is Ryan Johnson signing off. Have a great day.